We are live.
You're live, Jim.
Okay, 6 o'clock, let's call the Westfield Redevelopment Commission meeting to order. John?
Mike's on.
Yep, sorry, I need to get a little closer. Would you take roll, John?
Will do. Jimmy Cox,
Here.
Bob Beaudry,
I'm here.
Linda,
Here.
Doug,
Here?
Jill,
Here?
Here.
Oh, Joe.
Joe.
Joe, here.
You're both here.
Sorry.
Excellent. We got a
Well,
quorum.
Okay, first item on the agenda is the approval of the Redevelopment Commission minutes for September, I'm going to take them separately, September 20th, 2021. Are there any additions or corrections to the minutes? There is one typo here, John, under 2022 budget. It says budge instead of budget. I think we missed a T on there. That's on page 2, first paragraph under budget. That needs to be corrected, minor. Okay, anything from the commission members on the minutes themselves? Okay, if not, open for a motion for approval of the minutes for our meeting of September 20th, 2021.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion from Doug. Do I have a second?
Second, making sure
Second,
that we
Linda
have that
Noss.
correction.
Thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
And Bob?
Aye.
Okay, thank you, sir. Next item for consideration are the minutes from the October 18th, 2021 Redevelopment Commission meeting. Any changes or corrections to the minutes as presented? Okay, hearing none, I move that the minutes be approved as presented. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, Linda Noss, thank you. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Jill? Okay. Jill, are you there? I think we lost Jill. Okay, well, minutes are approved, 4-0. and-
I'm still here, sorry.
Okay, so we got approval 5-0 on the minutes from the October meeting. Next item on the agenda is approval of claims. Any questions on the claims that are presented? And I know they were late, Linda, but we get them when we get them.
Well, that's okay. I had time to go through them. I still have a question on where we're posting some of these. So I'm kind of looking forward to the exit interview with the SBOA to ask that question. Based
Okay,
on
well,
what the
that'll be a
audit said
question that
last
the
year, so.
clerk will have to answer.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Any other comments, questions on the claims items? If not, look for a motion for approval.
So moved.
Okay, motion by Doug Holtz. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Jill Doyle, second. All in favor of approving the claims as presented, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Bob? Bob, are you there? Bob Beaudry.
Yeah.
Okay, aye. Linda?
No, I'm going to hold off.
Well, is it yes or no?
It's a no.
No. Okay, Doug?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, 4-1, claims have been approved. Next item on the agenda and I should have done this beginning of the meeting, I apologize, we do not have the contract presented yet for Legacy Sports Group Agreement. That will be carried over. So the question I have, there's some timing issues here we'd like to try to address, are the RDC members, and I'll just take an informal poll here in a second, are the RDC members available to meet next Monday evening at 6 o'clock? Doug?
Yes.
Okay, and you can do remote also, obviously. Jimmy? Okay, Linda, are you
Yes.
available? Okay, Bob, are you available for next Monday, remote or in person?
Yeah.
Okay, Jill, are you available next Monday?
Yes.
Okay, we will then schedule a meeting. John, if you would post an agenda for that meeting in the kiosk here out front, we need at least 48 hours' notice. and then we should be good with that. So we're going to carry that over to next Monday's meeting. Next item on the agenda is the tree runners agreement. Questions, and you sent a nice note around, I think, Linda, that had a number of items that you suggested be addressed in there, and I did not get a chance to go through and see if this final form from CAM had some of these items in there, or if they need to be changed to address those particular items.
Did you get a copy, William? Because I don't think I copied you.
No, and I did not see the comments, or else I'd have been prepared to address them, but
William, here, there's, to me, is it basically typos or just some language, Linda, that clarifies it?
Just to be sure of some things and to add some things, like in section 2B, and maybe you know these things, William, are we going to have zip lines? That wasn't mentioned.
there is a plan to have 1 or 2 zip lines incorporated into the ropes course,
And
yes.
should that be in the agreement?
Yes.
Okay, so that was section 2B. Under 2C, my question was, the insurance participant waivers, will we have those?
Yes.
When they were talking about equipment, helmets and gloves, most of them are required to provide those, and we didn't list those. We just listed harnesses and clips. So I think helmets and gloves would be good to add. Copy of the training materials for review, a hold harmless clause, unless you feel that that's covered towards the end of the agreement.
Yeah.
Proof of OSHA or safety checks of courses. I know a lot of these in other parts of the country, they have to go through these regular safety checks. So do we, and then, section 2D, line 2, tenant shall at all times, I think that was a typo. 5A, design, build, management, maintenance, and marketing. It just seems to be oddly stated. The grammatical sense doesn't work. Either it's marketing ing or it's maintaining ing. Just wanted you to look at that. Section 6, sentence 2, so long. As such utilities, I think as was missing. 7B, line 3, in accordance with plans. These are some typos, I think. 9A, add and sports campus. 13C, with all related costs paid by tenant. 24, use of the name Grand Park and marketing materials to be approved by owner. I thought maybe we want something in there. If they're gonna start using the Grand Park name, maybe we wanna see it ahead of time and make sure that it's in line with how we want to promote that. And then under, they had very good information on checking out employees and all, but I thought maybe add something about background checks, since it's, a lot of children going to be involved.
Yeah, we can
Okay.
definitely, since this is the first I've seen this, I'll go ahead and go through it with
Okay.
CAM. I think we've been working on the agreement just to get it to a point where we could share it. There's still some edits that we need to make from some of the other items, so I'll incorporate this
Okay.
into that review for sure.
Yeah, I've not seen this, and I don't know what version you received. There have been several rounds of internal changes and some structural things that we did. I would say I'll be glad to review this list and reconcile all the different sort of sets of comments
Yeah.
out there. One thing that I want to say initially is that we may have some further discussion on the line between what we're mandating that they do, because sometimes the further we go down that road, the further we can incur liability by being
Right.
overly prescriptive
True.
about how they
Yeah.
need to proceed. So that's a line in a agreement like this that we always have to be cognizant of. So I'll be glad to take those comments and again, reconcile them, and we'll see where, if there's any response or reasons why I think that we may not want to make that change. I'll be glad to communicate with you about that.
Okay, I think I did copy you on that on the Saturday the 13th. And then my other question is, when will we receive the Exit A Sky Park plans for review? Exhibit A was blank.
Yes,
So will we
I have
get that?
I have that same question.
Okay, all right.
I,
That's fine.
yep, no, it was I had a marginal note in a red line version that we'd circulated previously. So, as a form, that one, it certainly needs to be part of prior to it being considered final. I think those plans need to be
I
part
think
of
it'd
it.
be good for everyone to see it before
I would
we-
suggest then that we try to get that out as early as we can, Cam, and then maybe carry this item over to next Monday's meeting. I don't think that's a real delay for tree runner.
No,
Yeah, we
I
can
agree.
definitely cover this at Monday's meeting. I think that we have an exhibit that we could use current day. Their arborist has come in and kind of done an evaluation of the site, and we'll get an actual site plan. But I think what we have could serve as a good base plan for what they're looking to execute.
Okay, well, since
Great.
you'll be the main
Yeah.
item on the agenda Monday, William, we can handle this one then too,
Yep.
if the commission members are okay with that.
Yep.
Okay,
That's
It
probably
might
a good
be,
time.
it might be cleanest if you want to table it,
okay, well, let's, okay.
or
I move
or
that
just
we
move on
table
and
this.
just consider this discussion, that's
Okay,
fine
I
too.
move we table this to allow Cam and William to work through the details that have been brought up and any other items that need to be handled, and we'll schedule it for the meeting a week from tonight.
I'll
Do I have a
second that.
second to that motion?
I'll second it.
Second from Linda. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye.
Aye.
Bob?
Aye.
Okay, thank you. We'll carry that over till next Monday. Okay, next item on the agenda is the Noblesville M-O-U. And I think you're going to cover that for us, Cam, or John? Todd is not available.
Yeah, so I think as to the practical effect of this, I'm sure that the city folks can speak to sort of the nature of this agreement, but just in terms of form, this is typically the way that these things would be contracted between governmental units when it doesn't rise to the level of requiring an interlocal agreement, and those criteria typically relate to sharing of revenue or an ongoing sort of fiscal commitment one way or another, or the provision of services on an ongoing basis. This really, I think, is a matter of convenience related to reunification sites, and a way that the communities can work together and use assets like Grand Park to serve needs in the unfortunate potential event of an emergency for schools, et cetera. So it's appropriate, certainly in form. As to the policy nature of the document, I think that's for you all to consider and discuss.
Is it correct to say that this is really a document for us to you might say ratify, to move the project forward? Because obviously there's no contractual obligation on anybody's part at this point because nothing has been decided.
Right. Yeah, I think that does make sense to discuss and determine if it's ready for a consent vote to move forward with what's contemplated in the MOU, just to work toward an
Okay.
agreement.
So for commission members, and first I'll go to folks that are remote. Jill, do you have any questions on this memorandum of understanding between Westfield and Noblesville, since it involves Grant Park?
I do not, no.
Okay, Bob, do you have any questions?
I think Linda was going to bring it up. We were discussing this, and I think there's a question on the verbiage of the memorandum. Would it be between Noblesville Schools and the city, or Noblesville Schools and the RDC? Since Grand Park does fall under the scope of the RDC, would that need to be changed in the memorandum of understanding, or?
Well, if there's a final agreement that would be consummated, then there would be a vote that would be necessary on that final agreement by the RDC, since it involves the facility that we're responsible for operating. At this point, nothing's been negotiated, nothing's been finalized, so it would be all basically, I think this carries forward as saying, hey, you guys can go ahead and talk about it. We know that you would use our facility. Until we find out exactly how that would work, just go ahead and have the discussions between the two communities and come back with us on what you guys work out. And then it'd be up to us to either approve or vote down that particular agreement as it involves Grant Park.
True.
Is that an accurate?
Yes, although I think the point is well taken in so far as that it relates specifically to real property that's part of Grand Park that is Redevelopment Commission owned and controlled. So that probably is ultimately the right party to be party to any agreement. But I think this is a more preliminary step that we're considering this evening.
Okay.
And when you're looking, when you're looking at that, Cam, would you look under section 2, the timing, because they're proposing that these plans and procedures, we need to review and approve within 15 business days of receipt from the school. Well, we only meet once a month, and then the B is kind of the same thing. Is that a timing we can live within? The 15 days, and then the next one is 30? Or can we say the next meeting, or?
Right. I read that as sort of an agreement to agree to a framework, and to the extent that there's a need for adjustment of the time period, it would still be, I think, important at this point to have a go ahead and continue to negotiate these points
Okay.
at this point, and then we can raise those with Noblesville Schools. We may need them to understand the meeting's calendar or schedule, and when we'd be able to approve certain plans once they're received, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, Doug, any questions?
Yeah, I have a question. In past life, I was involved with governmental entities, schools, local agreements, and in memorandums of understanding. There would always be some provision, we call it a play nice clause, where it's basically a hold harmless between the two entities. That we agree, we're not going to sue you, you're not going to sue us. If something goes wrong, we'll be responsible for our own negligence, you be responsible for your negligence. Will this agreement also include something to that effect?
I would certainly contemplate that. Any agreement that would come out of this sort of working document I would imagine would include mutual indemnification clause, and, I would insist on that.
Okay.
So yes,
Okay,
I think the answer is
Okay,
yes.
that's fine, thank you.
Okay, anything else? Jimmy?
Yeah. Excuse me, I have a question just in terms of current relationships between Westfield, the city, and the Westfield schools. Is there anything similar in place for us with this, and would it get confusing, or I'm just envisioning like two sets of parents showing up and, hundreds of kids there. I didn't know if there was anything already in place that should be considered.
Jimmy, I can speak to that, just a little bit of history. We have had those conversations with the school, with Westfield Washington Schools. And I think those are really ongoing. The reality with this type of activity is this is not a one-site activity. Recommended by public safety is any type of agreement like this is at least 3 sites. So that we're just one of the possible sites, and that's what a lot of this dialogue will be about. So as I would see it playing out, to your point, there would be discussion where we would pull the school in, and we would start talking about those opportunities also. I know at one time we were looking at IMI, we were looking at other sites, and again, there's a plan A, plan B, plan C, and that has to be part of this product. And
But that has to be then
that's all part of.
specified by Noblesville Schools, because
Yeah.
they're the ones asking for this
Yeah,
particular
and I think
venue.
back to Cam's point tonight, we just we're asking the commission to allow us to move forward and continue to negotiate in good faith. Thank
Okay.
you.
Good way of putting it,
Thank you.
John, thank you. Does that answer your question, Jimmy? Okay. Any other comments from commission members? And I'll make a motion to approve the memorandum of understanding to allow the city to move forward with discussions with Noblesville.
I second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Jill?
Aye.
Bob Beaudry?
Aye.
Linda?
Aye.
Joe Plankus, aye. Doug?
Aye.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll pass that along to Todd and let him know that that's been approved. Okay, next item on the agenda is the SCP Trailhead Purchase Agreement. John, you want to cover this for us, or Cam?
Before you is the memorandum of understanding that was signed by the city with SEP to purchase what we call the Trailhead site. Attached to that memorandum is tonight's resolution. I thought I had a resolution number in here. I better get that updated. And the resolution basically states that we are going to follow through with the agreement, the MOU. We got the 2 independent appraisals for the property, and we're taking the average of those appraisals as the acquisition price. And tonight, we're here asking you to authorize that purchase. Those dollars are currently set aside in one of the EDAs, the Grand Junction EDA, which abuts this EDA. And it does clearly meet the threshold for the benefit of. And really, I think that's what I've got right now. If you've got any questions, please let me know.
Cam, anything you want to add to that?
No, I think that sums it up well.
Okay, questions from commission members. Start with Doug.
None.
Okay, Linda?
Yes, I had questions. When we received the appraisals the other night, my concern was that we do have 2 appraisals. They are separate. However, there's quite a disparity between the value. One valued the land at $521,000, the other one valued at $237,150, which is quite a difference and quite a disparity. And I realize that the purchase agreement is the average of the 2, and the state says you can have 2 in the average of the 2. However, the state is a lot like the banks. Look at this, when an appraisal comes in, they pretty much want it to be reasonable, reviewed, kind of gone over, and I wish we had seen that sooner, but I still question the validity of those 2 when there's such disparity. And then you go through the document, the appraisal documents, and on the Trainer appraisal, page 27, I found some things that weren't accurate, and also on some other pages, but it stated up in the top paragraph that there was a warranty deed recorded March 12th, instrument number that 1.84 acres was acquired for the 161st Union Street roundabout. Well, that's not accurate. It wasn't 1.84. I actually went to courthouse and got the document. It was actually .888 acres, 0.888. And the 184 was supposed to be the .91 plus the .93.
But that's the
of
roundabout,
trailhead.
Linda, that's not the trailhead.
I'm saying the 1.84 included the trailhead. It was .93 plus .91.
Sorry,
So
misunderstood.
just to clarify that we had not purchased that trailhead, the document clearly states that. But those appraisals, I worked 5 years in an appraisal firm, and if we got 2 with such disparity, we'd be really concerned about and we'd look into it in further detail. I think we had that time had we got them. I'm saying that right now, I think we'd even look for a 3rd appraisal or do a more in-depth purview of these 2 that we've received, because this is, again, taxpayer money, it's the people's money, it's the city's money. I'd like to pay them a fair market price, but I'd like to know that that's what it is, because the rate we're being asked to pay on this is, outside of that.
Hey, Cam, you want to address that? Procedurally.
Only to clarify that the statute specifically contemplates that they be independent appraisals and doesn't make any sort of requirements or statements as to the methodology or how close they need to be. And I think the city's taken those and averaged them, which is what's contemplated in the statute, as you said. I think the point is a policy consideration rather as to whether or not you wish to approve this resolution at this price. But I will say that, appraisals, as with anything else, are always subject to scrutiny, but there's not a legal requirement beyond that they be independent.
Well, the higher appraisal is more than twice the other appraisal. That's a considerable disparity. We're not looking at a few tens of thousands of dollars. We're looking at a difference of over $283,000 between the 2. And when you dig into that appraisal, you start seeing some things. This is a very unique property. It's not gonna sell for a fast food restaurant on 32. It's a Trailhead, that's what it's being sold for. It has a limited number of buyers. I just question the validity of the appraisals and want to make sure that we've done our due diligence. But we didn't know about this until very, very recently. We just had the weekend between then and now, so we didn't have time to really do much about it. I know if you take the letter of the law, but I've also talked to some people who work in that area, and they think it doesn't just mean 2 appraisals, it means 2 reasonable.
Well, I guess what I'm saying is it
Appraisals.
specifically says 2 independent appraisals.
Yes, it
And
does.
that's it.
And these
And I
are-
want to be clear, that's where, I didn't come up with a number. I drafted the resolution in my role as counsel to the commission. And, from my perspective, it's not a legal call as to what that number is, so long as it's derived of 2 independent appraisals, which I'm satisfied that it is. The other thing I would caution against is, I would caution against making a public record about the validity of the appraisals just for fear of potential defamation liability on the part of the city. So these are also deliberative material, the appraisals themselves. And so anytime that's discussed publicly, that privilege is eroded, but also anything that's specifically identified as some kind of allegation about the validity of an appraisal, I would just want to preface by saying I would caution against that. However, like I said, whether the price is reasonable relative to the deliberative appraisals that you've seen is for you to decide. Legally, I see that it is a price derived of 2 independent appraisals, which is what I believe is required by law.
That's what the project agreement calls for. Actually, it might be a bargain, because we got developers up the line asking for $525,000 an acre for property, so this
Hey,
might be a
Joe.
good price.
And we have Birch up the road a little ways saying just this week that he valued those acres he deeded to the city at $225,000. So
Well,
that's quite
He's not a licensed appraiser, so.
I understand
his
that, but the
opinion
city signed that a
doesn't-
deal too, that agreement also.
Question, has the city ever been presented with a situation in the past where you have 2 appraisals on properties that we're involved with, that were so wide or far apart? And if so, how was it resolved by the city? And were there any ramifications from the seller in regard to violation of the agreement to seek 2 appraisals?
Doug, I'm not aware of any similar situation to this.
Okay.
But I want to be clear that there are a lot of these deals that take place that don't ever cross my desk. So I want to be clear on that. But the times I've dealt with something like this, we've not had a similar situation. I mean, we've had deltas in the appraisals, but we've just took the number and moved on.
Okay.
Again, but
Wait.
that is just the
John, can you
few
hear me?
times I've been in the conversation.
Okay.
Okay.
John, can you hear
Bob,
me?
you were going to say something?
Yeah, I just wondered, honestly, are we looking for the minimum requirement as the RDC here? Or are we looking for fair and reasonable? Because I think I can speak for everyone when I say if I was selling my home and I got 2 appraisals that were that wide apart, there's no way I would be looking for accepting the middle of the road offer. And I think as an RDC member and a taxpayer, I have a higher expectation than to meet the minimum standard when it comes to, applying taxpayer funds. I'm with Linda. I want to uphold our end of the agreement, but I want it to be fair and reasonable. And I think when you have this wide of a gap between the two, I don't think anybody can sit here and say that that's reasonable when it comes to appraisals. And if it is, someone from these appraisal companies that needs to explain it to us in more depth. These appraisals were dated the 21st of September, I believe, and we're just now seeing them within the last few days, which that should have been a red flag when they were received by whomever. And I would have liked to have had more time to discuss it, and maybe we wouldn't even be going down this road if we would have had time to address this. But here we sit, kind of looking at this and with differing opinions, And I just think that we need to do our due diligence to make sure that it's fair and reasonable, and that we uphold the obligations of the city and of taxpayers. And that's my opinion, but I don't see why we would just take two offers because we're required to, split it down the middle and accept that as what our obligation is. You know, if they were even 50,000 or so apart, fine. But this is a big disparity, huge. That's my opinion.
And again, I'll just reiterate, the point's well taken, they are disparate. In considering what's legally required, they're independent. And so it is for you all to wrestle with and determine what your vote will be on the resolution before you, given those points. I'm not here as counsel to this commission telling you that what's reasonable, because that's not my job. What I'm telling you is that it is compliant with the statute in terms of dictating how property can be acquired.
It's compliant with the statute, it's also compliant with the agreement that we have with SAP.
Well, there's nobody that says we don't want to meet the requirement, but we just want to do it in a fair and reasonable manner. You know, we want to be treated fairly as well, so.
I'd also like to comment on, because this was available to us too. We have the the MOU executed, but we also had a V6 MOU document that actually within that stated in that section that the seller was expecting a purchase price of $392,124 per acre. That didn't end up in the executed MOU because it should never be in there, and anyone doing an appraisal should never have that information available to them. It shouldn't be discussed. There's a very long code of appraisal ethics, and that was out there in the public realm. So that concerns me too, and I don't ever want to see that happen again. And I don't want anyone to think who's coming into an MOU or agreement for us to buy property from them, that they're kind of telling us, I mean, in the negotiations, we understand this wouldn't be acceptable and this would. But they know that the state already has a requirement, 2 independent appraisals, that anyone that I've talked to who's done this in other places using that code said, yeah, they have to be fair and reasonable. I understand what you're saying. We won't get sued for this, but we just might be upset in the court of public opinion, and I do want to do what's fair for that seller of that property. But I think we have to be careful in negotiations what we've promised them and what we've told them, because that gets you into very dangerous territory.
In
It
your
does,
reference to
and-
that 390,000 plus price, Linda, where's that information?
That's in the MOU V6 document that we had before we got the executed one. It was on the website, it was available as attachment. I have it with me if you'd like to see it, but yeah.
Yeah, well, I'm trying to understand where
It's
this
this one,
information comes from.
it was called the FDB&R Draft 6/12/2020 V6, meaning version 6. And right here it said that, and of course, it didn't end up in the final one, and that's good, that would not have been a good thing.
I was just gonna say, this agreement predates me, but that tells me that it was caught, which you're correct.
Yes, but it was
That should never
still-
be agreed
but it
to
was
because
still
you have to
here
follow the
and
process.
available, and actually,
Is
when,
that the executed document, Linda?
no,
That the-
this is the version prior to the executed
Okay,
document.
so it's irrelevant because
it's
we
in
have
the-
an executed
But it's-
document.
Okay, but it's in the public realm, and let me also say that if you go to when we bought the right-of-way for the roundabout, this is the exact acreage price we paid for that acreage. So it had a relevance, okay? That's all I'm saying. I just want us to not get into legal trouble, so I respect your opinion, but I also don't want to be in trouble with misusing the people's money. I want us to do our due diligence. And appraising is important to me. And I think to almost everybody has had to do appraisals so that they have an understanding what those are about. That's all I want to say.
Cam, any other comments?
No, well, no, only to reiterate, I think it.
Well, we have to
Whether-
act on what's in front of us.
Whether it's legals, what I've reviewed, I see that it says independent, we're there. Whether it's fair and reasonable is your all to decide, knowing that there is an agreement that does obligate the acquisition of that Trailhead parcel.
That's correct.
If you, like, voting on the price is your provenance as the commission.
Well, and I suggested earlier we could get a third appraisal, or we could review these more in depth so that we would feel more comfortable that we are offering a fair and reasonable price to the property owner and to the city and the taxpayers.
You know, based on what I've seen for property selling along 31, this figure comes in under what other people are asking for. So, you know, we can probably debate that, whether it's fair and reasonable. Obviously, there's a big delta between the two, but we have to follow the agreement that we have. Otherwise, we're violating the agreement where it says we have to have 2 independent appraisals, and that's what we have. John?
Jeremy Lawler, are you online? Just curious.
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can, Jeremy.
There you go. Go ahead, Jeremy.
Sorry, I've been trying to talk for a while, but my microphone is not working appropriately. You guys actually covered most of my comments, and I think Kim did as well. I guess back to, I believe it was Mr. Beaudre's question of have we had despairing, I guess, appraisals like this with such a dramatic gap in the past, and how did we handle it? Most of the purchases or appraisals come through my office as a part of projects. I don't recall one with this much of a gap before, but I do know that we always follow the law, which requires the 2 and then the average. And I would like Cam to correct me if I'm wrong, but if we end up getting a third appraisal, that doesn't disqualify or eliminate the higher appraisal that we're talking about. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that would be correct. Now, getting a third would be an interesting legal conundrum, simply because the statute leaves a lot open in that scenario. It specifically says no more than the average of 2 independent appraisals. If you had a third,
Right. So
yes,
if we had a third,
you might have to
it
sort
came
of
in
pick which
higher,
2.
we're the average of the 2 highest appraisals, and then we ultimately are going to pay more for the value of the land.
But you know,
Correct.
Jeremy, when there's eminent domain cases, and those are based on appraisals, and they end up in court, those appraisers typically have to come in, the court assigns other appraisers, but the original appraisers have to come in and defend their appraisal, and many times there are significant changes, and I'm just saying, we didn't even get a chance to talk to this appraisal. It would have been a red flag if I'd seen it saying, are you sure you want to go with this number? Can we go through page by page? Can we look at this? Is there a possibility that you've made an error? And I can't sit here and say, I know what properties on 31 are going for. I would not say that. Even if I had some documentation, I expect the appraisers to review that. That's not my position.
And I don't disagree with you when it comes to the condemnation cases. And the reason for that is because there's a judge trying to make a determination based on the value of the property. We're not here. The statute doesn't allow us to make that judgment. It allows us to get 2 appraisals and take the average of the 2. So I don't disagree with you there. I think we're dealing with a different situation here. The other comment that I would add is the number that you referenced in V6 or whatever of the MOU, that $393,000 that number was derived by, that was the purchase price for the land. They were trying to recuperate their costs. So we're actually paying them a lesser value than what they originally paid for the property.
Well, actually, Jeremy, they've revealed that, and they actually paid about $242,000 an acre for that property.
Who revealed that,
Okay.
Linda?
That is in the documents at the courthouse on what they bought and sold that property for between the 2 parties. So that is public knowledge, and that's public knowledge to appraisers also. They sold it for $5.3 million, 21.85 acres.
And I could be mistaken on that, and I do apologize. I wasn't involved early on, but the 393 was derived from either the purchase price or their intended listing and sale price. one of the two. But nonetheless, I'm confident that we follow the statute correctly. We've got the two appraisals. We're taking the average of the two appraisals. Getting a third is going to, in my opinion, not only open us up to liability, but additional costs.
Then I suggest we review both appraisals and see if they believe they can stand on those.
They're
just
both
saying.
very recognized and professional appraisers, and I don't believe that they are going to backtrack on the document and the professional services they provided.
Well, it's kind of listed in their appraisal form that they would do that, and they would charge us to do it.
Okay, anything else you want to add, Cam? Okay, we have
Hey,
a resolution before us. Obviously, it's somewhat contentious in some areas. We have followed the law. We have two appraisals. We split the appraisals for the purchase price. That's in alignment with the agreement we have with the seller. So I'm going to ask for a motion for approval of this resolution.
So moved.
Okay, we have a motion by Doug Holtz. Do I have a second? I will second that motion. We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion?
I have one question. Where are we funding this out of the Grand Junction TIF?
I'm sorry, Bob, could you repeat the question?
I'm just wondering, why are we funding this out of the Grand Junction TIF? The SEP doesn't, it's not in the TIF.
The Grand Junction EDA has a land purchase line item that I use for all the adjoining areas. Basically, I have that in there every year for the budget purposes. And as I understand it, and I'd let Cam speak to this, but it's for the benefit of, and so that's the default, the EDAs for using those dollars.
Yeah, I think the why question is a practical consideration that relative to John's position and his service to the commission. The how is by virtue of language in the statute that allows for expenditures that serve and benefit a designated economic development area. It's my understanding that this trailhead is to serve a trail that literally passes through both of these adjoining economic development areas, and therefore is entirely consistent with my understanding of the nature of that provision in the statute that allows for public infrastructure to be improved utilizing tax increment captured within an allocation area, within an economic development area, so long as the expenditure serves or benefits that area. And here we're talking about a trail that does connect the two. And so I think it meets that test. It's for you all to decide in your consideration of this resolution whether you believe that.
Okay, thank you, Cam.
It's, let me
yeah.
sort of clarify. There is a finding within the resolution to that effect that is part of your consideration of the resolution.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. John, let's take roll call on the vote.
Bob Beaudry,
No.
Linda Nass,
No,
Doug Holtz,
Yes.
Jill Doyle,
Yes.
Joe Plankus,
Yes.
3-5.
Okay, 3-2 vote. Motion passes. Next item on the agenda is the discussion of the use of escrow for Bullpen. Ken Coker is here this evening to address that with us. Ken, come on up. And also Blake Hibbler.
what about the declaratory resolutions?
Yeah, you jumped
Oh,
over.
oh,
Did we skip that?
Joe, I didn't realize what time it was. We really need to we need to really cover resolution 4, 5, and 6.
Okay,
Um,
let's
for
skip
the-
let's skip down.
for these, because these are state requirements, and we need to get
Yeah,
this
we need to
pushed
get the
through
deadline on
for
this.
I mean, if you all would please just,
Yeah.
I think you've had some time to look at this. I tried to get this out to you as quick as I could, and as you can see in the new packets, I've actually highlighted the areas that we're pulling out, the residential areas, in the packets. And if I could get a,
Yeah. Okay, John, why don't you address that, these
Okay.
resolutions, if you will, exactly what.
well,
what the
we've
goal is.
we've got Jim Treat on, and I'll let him cover it real quick, and then if we could move through this, I'd really appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, Jim Treat, you're on.
I'm here. I don't know if we got time to even go through the PowerPoint I put together, guys. I thought we'd have more time, and so I tried to put together a PowerPoint with maps and some historical numbers, so you'd have a little bit more to go on than what you might have just by looking at the resolutions. But we have 3 areas that we want to address some changes in the composition of those areas, okay? And it's 3 similar but different situations. One is an area, it's Lantern Commons, that never has had any tax increment revenue and may continue on that track if we don't take action to amend the area. So, and I'll get to that in a, so there's the map, and I got a lot of comments here. I'm going to skip to the important stuff here, is that it has never generated any tax increment revenue. At this time, the part that's developed, that's Woodside Drive, is the developed residential parcels. The big piece now is that's the lower half portion there is still coded as residential, and it's 4 different parcels. The county's in the process of pulling that together under the new owner that's going to develop it next year. And so as of January 1, that parcel is going to become 1 big parcel instead of 4. And it's also, at my request, going to be commercial, not residential. So that's why in this case we want to delete the area or get rid of the whole area. And then we want to form a new area next year once this area, once the bottom part becomes a non-residential area. Click to the next slide if we're going to go through these real quick. So here's the numbers I'm looking at, guys. This just shows you for the last 5 years, but I can go back to day 1 when this was formed in 2008. There's never been any tax increment revenues generated by this area because nothing's really been developed. And what's happened is in the last several years, the DLGF has had the counties treat residential parcels that were either intentionally or unintentionally ended up in a TIF area differently than what they've treated them before. And to make it real simple, they kind of ignored them before. They didn't make us neutralize them. They kind of acted like they weren't there because you really don't capture any increment from residential parcels. But what they've done in the last several years, that being the state and DLGF made the county start doing some different things if you had residential parcels in a TIF area. And so what's happened here is that center column, this is a real good example for you to see, was around $3 million. Now it's up to $4 million as the most current assessed value. That's the total assessed value of all the properties in there, in that whole map, residential, or well, the developed residential and the undeveloped residential. But what's happened is we've got now neutralization calculations that have adjusted the base values up beyond what the current assessed value. And I know you can tell me this, it doesn't make any sense, but unfortunately that's what the software does when they neutralize and use these residential parcels in a TIF area. So what it's doing, you guys, is it's creating negative captured assessed value. Now, you really can't have negative captured assessed value. So in case of Lantern Commons, this $3.1 to $3.9 million is what the base is, and we just aren't capturing anything. But in the TIF reports, which I can share with you, I haven't copied those tonight. They're kind of hard to read, but I can provide copies. You've got a base value that exceeds the actual current assessed value of the properties. And what it does in a TIF report is it creates negative captured, it creates negative captured assessed value. So what's going to happen is when the developer comes in next year, and if they get that big piece, the bottom piece that's not residential, reclassified to commercial and develop it, we're going to lose the first $2 million at least of new development because of this negative capture that they've kind of artificially created. So in order to fix this, what I'm proposing is that we just dissolve the Lantern Commons area as it was originally created, okay? And what that will do, and then what I want to do is I will come back after the first of the year and we'll recreate it with the one new business parcel that will exist. And then that way the values for that parcel will go back to the actual $1.5 million of current assessed value will go in base, and all the residential will be gone. We won't have this kind of false adjustment to the values. So that's the situation with Lantern Commons. Let's move on. I mean, I don't know if you want to, you could have lots of discussion about this, but I don't think you've really got much
Keep
time.
it moving because we're tight on
We're going to have
time.
we're going to have a public hearing, so there's going to be time between now and the next month. We still have to have council approval and a public hearing. So this is the first adoption of this resolution is the first thing. Aurora, the situation is kind of similar. Aurora 1's on the right, guys. And what's happened is that was created also in 2008, and a lot of this was because of the recession back then. Nothing really happened for quite some time. And then in the last 2 years, this, what's the name of that subdivision got created, Coventry, the Lennar subdivision. But it was part of originally what was part of this about 12 parcel allocation area. Well, they've now subdivided into 200 and some parcels that are individual homes, some developed, some not. And so now we've got this situation with this large commercial or residential value that's grown in this area. And what it's done is, if you look at the next slide, when the numbers were normal, we had about $400,000 in assessed value. 200 and some was in base, and the rest was in capture. We got a few $1,000s a year in TIF revenues. What's happened now is we've got this huge growth in this residential base that isn't part of really what we can capture. And so it's creating this $14 million worth of negative assessed value. And again, I can show you the reports from the county to prove it to you, but that's what it's doing. So in this case, we've lost all the small, it was a small amount, but we're not getting any TIF revenues from Aurora 1. We are from Aurora 2, but not from Aurora Run anymore. And now that area is being developed, as you can see if you drive by, and there's a new warehouse and some other things happening. If we don't fix this and disband this area and then recreate it with just the commercial parcels, then we're not going to be able to capture anything from this new warehouse development. And so what will happen is, if you go forward with this resolution, we'll dissolve A1 as it exists now, and we'll create a new one with 11 parcels, which will go back to their $182,000 current land value. And then we'll capture everything from there on. On the Eagletown one, different situation in that it is a very prosperous area. You go to the next slide, you can see you've got Grist Mill is what we want to take out. It's the one area that's now been developed, and it's as residential within this bigger, broad view of Eagletown. And so this area has been developed and is starting, the assessments have started coming in, pay 22. And so if you look at the next slide, you can see that this one, we don't have this situation of the others. Right now, the base is reasonable. We've got $66 million in total AV, 60 is captured and 5 is in base. But if we wait another year and let these 200 parcels come in at Grist Mill, and that's not all of them, there are more future ones, we're going to start diminishing this great growth you can see in the TIF revenues over the right-hand side of this area. And we count on this area to pay bonds in that area and to help with the Grand Park bonds, so that we don't want that to happen. And the other thing we've added, sorry, that's new, is there's a paragraph in this one that says, in the future, because we know it's going to happen, if there's future parcels in that area that are subdivided and turned into residential, the county will delete them from the TIF area. We won't have to go through this process again on this area. So I know that's a lot of data to cover in a short period of time, but I really tried to give you a lot of information. I don't know when you received it, but I put it together.
Okay,
I don't know if we have time for questions, but
Thank you very much, Jim. And I think it's a good explanation. Any questions real quick here from
Individual
commission
resolutions.
members? I think it's pretty straightforward. Cam?
Let me add one thing, which is the approval mechanics. This is, maybe some of you have been through this, but I think since my time working with you all, this is the first time we've had this scenario. Just want to make sure we're clear. By statute, it's a multi-step, multi-body approval process to amend a TIF district, by which I mean an economic development area and/or an allocation area. Here, it's allocation areas within three different EDAs. First, it starts with a declaratory resolution. So what you have in front of you this evening are 3 separate declaratory resolutions making the amendments that Jim just outlined in that presentation. From here, the next step is the Plan Commission, and they have resolutions on their agenda this evening that determine whether or not the changes contemplated in these declaratory resolutions that you all will adopt are consistent with the comp plan for the city. After that point, it will go to the city council to determine that they believe that these changes are appropriate. Then we will notice a public hearing for the December meeting of the Redevelopment Commission. That will be published in the paper. You'll have a public hearing on all 3 of these declaratory resolutions, and then you will consider confirmatory resolutions and vote whether or not to approve and adopt confirmatory resolutions confirming these changes. So this starts the process. There's more to come.
Okay, and obviously we're limited on time here. Let's take all 3 resolutions, I think, as a batch, if you will. And John, you'll need to assign numbers to them and get that taken care of.
They have numbers on
They
the
have
handouts.
numbers, okay. So, do I have a motion for approving the 3 resolutions as presented tonight and explained by Jim Treat?
I move to approve resolution number 04, 2021, resolution number 05, 2021, and resolution number 06, 2021.
Okay, we have a second?
Thank you for saying it that way.
Second.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
Okay, we
I'll
have a
second.
motion and a second. Let's take a vote. John, take a roll call, please.
Bob Beaudry,
Yes.
Linda Nass,
Yes.
Doug Holtz,
Yes.
Jill Doyle,
Yes.
Joe Plankus.
Yes. Okay, motion passes. Thank you, John. We're going to have to carry over the bullpen till next Monday. Ken, are you available for that? Okay, that'd be great. And also the ratification of Grant Park agreements. We need to let the APC get in here and do their thing this evening, so we'll carry that over to Monday since we're going to have William there for the Legacy Sports Group agreement. So any additional business, John?
Not at this time.
If not, meeting is adjourned.
Do you think Ken has anything he wants?
We could do it later. We can bring it back at next Monday's meeting. Okay.
Take care, Jim.